explain your present position on Wikileaks, please?
I've been very critical of WikiLeaks. I don't view WikiLeaks as playing the same role that the New York Times did in the Pentagon Papers case. I think they behaved recklessly. I think they revealed information which could lead to significant harm to individuals and ultimately to the country. And I don't believe that WikiLeaks is engaged in what I would call journalism. Not because I disagree with it or them, but to cite one example, when it looks like Private Manning provided them with over 90,000 military reports written by American soldiers in Afghanistan, and WikiLeaks released to the public 77,000 of them. Julian Assange was asked by a journalist, how many of those that you've released have you and your colleagues read? And he said about 2,000. The journalist said, well, haven't you released 77,000 if you've read 2,000? He said, well, I don't think there's anything in there, no reason to think anything in there would harm or threaten personal security or life or limb. The lesson I took from that is that whatever else you want to say about WikiLeaks or Mr. Assange, that has nothing to do with journalism. Journalists don't release documents. They write about things. Journalists don't hand out 75,000 pages they haven't read. But the hard question then is, well, what about the First Amendment? We get First Amendment protection to political activists. You don't have to be a journalist to get First Amendment protection. So the fact that I don't think he's a journalist or that they're engaged in journalism doesn't begin, in my view, to answer the question of what sort of legal protection they should get if they were accused here. And unfortunately, we live under an Espionage Act passed in 1918 at a time when the First Amendment didn't even apply to the states at all, and written very broadly right after World War I had ended. So it has language in it about the publication or the release of information, quote, relating to the national defense being barred. Well, it can't be that. Everything in the New York Times is about national defense when they write about the Defense Department. So the courts, in all the years after 1918, have been struggling to find the balance between what the First Amendment protects and what the country and its people are entitled to do by way of defending themselves against the release of what? Take an easy case, atomic weapon technology. There's a separate statute dealing with that. It's one of the few statutes that makes it a crime to publish and says so. I think if there were a case against WikiLeaks, they would have a significant amount of First Amendment protection. I can't answer the question of how far the courts would go in applying that protection. One of the realities that you don't really talk about much in law schools is that there are more or less attractive parties in court, sympathetic parties that are viewed as more sympathetic. Judges, like juries, like all of us, would sort of like to rule for if we have a chance. WikiLeaks itself is very controversial. The fact that I defined myself earlier for you as more liberalish than not, and that I've been so critical of them is just one example of the difficulties WikiLeaks would have, I think, in persuading a jury that they should be let off. But I hope that if we do have a case, that we really keep in mind that, again, our country alone protects people who've done a lot worse things than WikiLeaks, right? I mean, we protect not